What up? This is Josh Rubin from East West Healing and Performance. Today I want to talk to you and introduce you to my new diet that I'm doing. It's called the KE Feeding Tube Diet. It's based out of Florida from a doctor. His name is Dr. Oliver R. D. Pietro. And what it is it's a great way of dieting, and I highly recommend this. A, because it actually is quite fashionable. We have people walking around the streets, people walking around LA, all these fashionable people who are very superficial and have no life, walking around with these feeding tubes in their nose that goes into their stomach with a pack on, with a liquid solution that's basically 800 calories a day, high in protein, high in fat, which is probably synthetic crap, high in synthetic vitamins and nutrients to meet your metabolic needs because you're deficient because you're not eating foods. That's almost nil in carbohydrates. It's probably loaded with high fructose corn syrup or other types of sugars that our body really can't metabolize. And we do this for 10 days. It's great. People are using it to lose weight for their, to lose 15, 20, 25 pounds in 10 days for their wedding. People are doing it because it's fashionable. Everyone's doing it. People are doing it because in all their other diets they can't lose weight. This is actually unbelievably ludicrous. I really don't have any words to describe how retarded this is. Now, of course, this isn't a real feeding tube. It's a piece of string. But I just want to show you what people are actually walking around doing. And like I mentioned, it's a 800 calorie a day diet. It's 10 days. There's only one doctor in the U.S. that's actually, introducing this, a license to do it. You're getting, it's $1,500 to boot. You're getting synthetic vitamins and minerals. It's proteins and fats. And the bottom line is what they're trying to do is they're trying to put the body into a state of ketosis in order to get you to lose weight. Now, you've watched a lot of my YouTubes, and I've talked about how you actually don't lose weight to get healthy. And our society is really ingrained with that if you have a six-pack, that you're healthy. If you don't have a six-pack, you're unhealthy. If you're ripped and you're skinny, you're healthy, and if you're not, you're unhealthy. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people who are underweight and undernourished in our society, and of course the way you look has an influence on how healthy you are, but it's not the underlying factor, because a lot of these healthy people that look healthy, we work with them. They're in a hypometabolic state. They're hypothyroid. They have high triglycerides. They have high cholesterol. They're depressed. I mean, the list goes on and on. They're actually quite tired. They have sleeping problems. They have anxiety, irritability, depression. I mean, it's just unbelievable, and people are actually taking it to this level. And what this actually is, if you do the research, this feeding tube and the solution that they're using is actually what they use to keep coma patients alive. I cannot believe that our society has taken it to this level. Now, just a little bit about ketosis. This is, for me, this is just like a lot of these high-protein diets, putting the body into a state of like gluconeogenesis, putting the body into ketosis with no carbohydrates. As I mentioned, your cell's primary source of fuel is carbohydrates to produce energy. That's your primary source. Your central nervous system's primary source of fuel is sugar, or the right types of sugar, glucose, carbohydrates. Your liver, its metabolism is dependent on glucose to produce thyroid hormone. Your thymus is dependent on sugar to produce antibodies. A developing embryo, a developing fetus, is dependent on sugar to upregulate metabolism to produce all its anti-inflammatory protective hormones like progesterone. I mean, the list goes on and on and on, and we're cutting carbohydrates out of our diet, and we've taken it to this level. It's literally, it's out of control. Our society is out of control. So what ketosis is, it's an elevated level of ketone bodies in the blood when liver glycogen stores are almost completely depleted. What they're trying to do is, when you're in this state, you actually increase fat metabolism for energy. But that's not your cell's primary source of fuel. Your body does use fat for fuel in small amounts, but it's not your body's primary source. It can't use it for a long period of time. And it's actually, in a long period of time, it's actually a sign of your body inhibiting glucose oxidation and using lipid peroxidation or fat for energy. And this is basically a one-way ticket to become diabetic, insulin resistant, and hypothyroid. And it's very damaging to the body. It's actually quite damaging to the kidneys and to the gut itself. And they talk about how this diet itself, some of the symptoms are actually bad breath, constipation, possible aspiration, which can lead to a multitude of dysfunction, kidney problems because of the high amount of acetone that's produced, high blood pressure, diabetes, headaches, weakness, dehydration, and fatigue. Who in their right mind would want to go on this friggin' diet if those are all your symptoms? If a diet is supposed to get you healthy and these are all the symptoms of dieting, how can this actually be beneficial for our body? Our society has taken it to a different level because they want to lose weight, because if they think they lose weight, they're actually getting healthy. How can you lose weight and be healthy by eating 800 calories a day of some synthetic crappy liquid, and you're depleting your liver glycogen stores? I could give a list of problems with this, but the bottom line is it's going to throw your body into a hypometabolic state. Anytime you don't meet your body's demands, and this is what paleo people say, is the reason you don't need carbohydrates. Because the body can actually convert amino acids into glucose and adapt to not getting enough carbohydrates. It can do that short term, but long term, that's actually a catabolic state. That's a sympathetic state. That's a chronic adaptation to not meeting your metabolic demands every day at the cell level. So anytime your liver glycogen stores are depleted because your body needs glucose, if you don't get glucose, you're going to go into a coma. And then you're really going to need one of these puppies. The body actually releases adrenaline. Now, rewind it a little bit because I've talked about this before. Most people in our society are decreasing their caloric intake, their energy intake, but increasing their energy demands. They're trying to increase what they're doing in society through working out, through working more, whatever they're doing, but they're decreasing the amount of calories or energy they're taking in. Now, in a simplistic sense, does that make any sense? You wouldn't put less gas in your car if you're going to try to drive across the United States. It really makes no sense. And the problem with this, the body adapts. It's designed to adapt so you don't die. And it does this by releasing many hormones. We're just going to talk about a couple of them because I talked about this before. By releasing adrenaline. And the body releases adrenaline because adrenaline first looks for stored glucose in your muscles and liver. The problem is when you're doing this diet or many other diets out there, you're not storing glucose. You're not storing glycogen in the liver. And the first problem with this is now the liver can't do what it's designed to do, detoxification-wise, immune system-wise, etc., or regulating blood sugar. That's why some of the symptoms are diabetes, constipation, weakness, fatigue, all these different things. So if you don't have stored glycogen, now you're going to see T3 levels drop. You're going to see reverse T3 levels go up. Because if you don't have enough stored glycogen, yes, adrenaline, it's going to search for this, and if it can't find it, it's going to start to... once glycogen's used up, it's going to start to kind of shift the body to use fat to meet its metabolic needs. The problem with this, it's not efficient. It's actually a huge metabolic drain to the body. And as I've talked about, the body uses more resources, three times more oxygen than if you use glucose to actually produce less energy by burning fat. So it's actually a huge metabolic drain to the body, leading to less ATP and energy production. Now this is short term. So if we become hyperadrenaline, and our pulse is over 85 beats per minute. Our body temperature is maybe really low, below 98, 97.8, something like that. We have increased heart rate, blood pressure, we're anxious, we're hungry, we're constipated. This is a hyperadrenaline state. Because we can't meet our demands, the body throws in some cortisol and says, well, because adrenaline is not doing it short term, I have to throw in some cortisol. Now, cortisol is designed to fight inflammation, regulate blood sugar. It's there for a reason. But in excess, it can actually sacrifice short-term it sacrifices long-term health for short-term gains. We need it, but as I've talked about, cortisol is a glucocorticoid. It's designed to regulate glucose. So if you can use the right carbs, you can actually down-regulate cortisol, because now you have stored glycogen. Cortisol in itself actually inhibits T4 to T3 conversion. It actually causes increased reverse T3 hormone in the body, which lowers T3 production, which can lead to fatigue, thinning of the body, demineralization of bone, weakened immune system, many diseases. The problem is you can only do this for so long, because if you're not meeting your body's demands, you're not converting cholesterol into pregnenolone to produce cortisol. If you're oversynthesizing all your progesterone and pregnenolone to produce cortisol because you're not having enough carbohydrates, if you're vitamin A deficient and T3 deficient because your body needs vitamin A, T3, and cholesterol to use it in the cell to produce pregnenolone and cortisol, now you're going to end up with low cortisol, which everyone says stage 3 adrenal fatigue, which is really just not meeting your metabolic demands, eating a diet deficiency in glucose, having a diet deficient in vitamin A, not being able to convert T4 to T3 in the liver, because over 90% is converted in the liver. So then you can't convert cholesterol to pregnenolone, so now you end up with high cholesterol levels, low cortisol levels, and everyone says that's adrenal fatigue. That's a marker for hypothyroidism. That's a marker for being in a damaged hypometabolic state. Now, beside that, cortisol demineralizes bones, leads to osteoporosis. It can elevate triglycerides. It increases estrogen levels in the blood, increases insulin levels. It increases free fatty acids that are released into the blood, which perpetuates the problem. It can actually block glucose inhibition even more, leading to diabetes. So this in itself is a huge problem. Now, I can't do anything about it. All I can say is understand what you're doing to your body, understand what you're putting in your body, because this is actually quite ludicrous that people are walking around the streets on a 800 calorie a day diet. Even if they're eating food, 800 calories a day isn't enough to meet your metabolic demands. It's enough to push you towards hypothyroidism. Understand what you're eating, the solution that you're putting in your body. Understand what carbohydrates do to your body. Understand why you need proteins, carbs, and fats, and not just proteins and fats. So hopefully you've enjoyed this clip. Do some research on it. It's called the feeding tube diet, the KE feeding diet, or the I'm really superficial and lazy diet, whatever you want to call it. Hope you enjoyed this YouTube clip, and I'm out of here.